Work session of education to order. Welcome everybody to our meeting. Welcome our new member, Mr. Johnson, joining us. Appreciate him making it remotely. We're all here. It's raining cool night, so without any further ado, we'll get started. Superintendent's comments. Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Clarsey. I want to welcome everyone, and I'm sure you heard Mr. Clarsey welcome Mr. Johnson. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Johnson, and we see you out there and very glad that you're able to join us remotely. And if you have any issues, don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll try to make sure you're connected and have what you need. And to all other staff members and potential visitors, good evening, and I'm glad you're where you are. I hope you're safe and sound. It is a rainy evening, so we'll go ahead and get started. Just a reminder to our board that our first January official board meeting is also going to be virtual. All of our board members will be here on Monday evening, but we will do our January action, our meeting where we take action items here as well. We will be doing some highlights and some recognitions, but we'll do those virtually, and we look forward to highlighting those folks. Just for our board's purposes and our community, I think it's important that our community is aware that every year our Board of Education partners with our Board of Commissioners to do some planning. And so I did speak to Dr. Cook this week, Mr. Clarsey and Ms. Wheeler, and Dr. Cook will facilitate that training on Friday, March the 5th, and we're working on a robust agenda. I met with Kevin Poe and Gina Roy today and have another meeting with them at the end of the month to make sure that we're preparing and planning to have a real productive meeting. So just want to remind everyone that agenda is attached. I haven't attached the agenda yet. I shared it with Mr. Clarsey and Ms. Wheeler, but if you could just go ahead and mark your calendars for that 4th and 5th. We're going to start on March the 4th here at 1 o'clock. None of us know for sure what our conditions in terms of the pandemic will look like, but we're hoping that we can certainly do this face-to-face in person, and we will do it in this room and limit the number of people here so that we can be safe. But we feel like it's probably important that we have some face-to-face planning time. So starting at 1 o'clock on March the 4th, and I will be happy to send that agenda to all of you, but that's a full day. We will also have Mr. Cronick's rescheduled reception that evening, and then we'll have a work session, and then we'll have parent advisory. So that will be a full night, and then all day on Friday. So if you'll mark your calendars. You have there every year our annual Board of Education ethics affidavit. That's just, we need to keep that on file for the auditors, if you can review that. And then the East West Intergovernmental Agreement. Just want to update the board. I have spoken to Ms. Jennifer Logan, who's our election supervisor. To my knowledge, as of this week, the Board of Elections is meeting in the morning, and we will expect that the referendum goes forward, and so that will be brought to our voters on March the 16th. We'll know that for sure tomorrow. This intergovernmental agreement is simply what we've already agreed upon to have the proceeds split between the 3 school districts. So we've always had a really good understanding about that, and we take the FTE from the year of the vote. So our FTE from October of 21, which will be this next October, whatever that percentage is, we prorate SPLOST proceeds. And so that's just an agreement that everybody understands. So that's how we'll do that. So that's there for your review. And then I did send to you for consideration, and it's a revision, so it can lay on the table. It doesn't have to lay on the table, but it can. In other words, we can revise it and approve it on Monday if you approve. But new legislation requires us to have a revised policy on public participation. So public comment will be on our agenda for every board meeting. And this is a revised policy on how we'll handle it. It's very similar to others around us. It's basically 24 hours notice. And we will ask people to limit their time to address the board to 3 minutes, limit the total public comment to 30 minutes unless the board chooses to extend it. And the board is never expected to take action on anything that's brought forward in a public comment. So there are also procedures that are a part of that. They're not a part of the policy, but they are amendments for that. So those are the only superintendent's comments I have, other than Happy New Year. And I do feel like it's really important that I send a shout out to our schools and our leaders. It's been a great start considering the conditions that we're all navigating right now. And Dr. Blankenship will update us a little bit more when we get down to human resources and student support services. But I will tell you that we have a significant issue in Jackson County right now, not Jackson County schools, but Jackson County as a community. If you don't already know, we have a very serious spread rate. And so our school leaders and our trying really hard to keep classes covered, but we have a very high staff impact right now. And our commitment has been that we're going to keep kids in school as long as we possibly can, as long as we can safely provide supervision for them. But when we reach a point that we don't feel like we can safely staff and we don't have enough staff to provide the services that we're trying to provide, at that point we need to consider remote. We had talked about with you all the plan before Christmas. That's the plan that we implemented, so that we were planning just 6-12. We went to K-12 with the alternating day. That has gone pretty good so far, but I'll reach out to you to confirm this before we go forward, but I would ask your blessing in that by school, if we have very serious situations that we can't man a school, that we may go remote for a week and evaluate the data and see if we can pull folks in. As you know, when a person tests positive or a person is in close contact, that's automatic 2 weeks that we lose that person and or their presence in school. So we're getting pretty close. It's 10 days, 10-day minimum.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Was 14, but CDC revised that and pushed it back to 10 days. So we're going to keep pushing hard, but right now it is pretty close to breaking point for a couple of our schools. So we'll update you tomorrow. We have a meeting with our principals tomorrow at 1 o'clock. We're going to evaluate all of our numbers and look at it school by school. And once we get to a place that we feel like we're ready to make a recommendation for that, we'll do that. So
I think to go along with what you were saying, Dr. Howard, we've pretty much supported that since the beginning. I don't think anything will change from that. What we've been doing is kind of my opinion.
okay. How do y'all feel about choosing it by school instead of a district-wide? So just take, for example, if Gum Springs has a high incident rate, Gum Springs goes to remote, but if other schools can keep going, they keep going? Or do you prefer, are you in support of that? We support that? Okay. Okay.
I would much rather.
I would say
Yes.
school.
By schools?
by
Okay,
schools,
good.
yes.
We would too. We'd much rather, that would be our preference. And our principals want, they seem to kind of cycle and they go through phases. And if they can stay in, they want to, but they don't want to hold others back who are struggling. So
And hasn't that been our practice?
it
Pretty much
has,
early on,
it
we
has
did-
been. We've
we
had,
were
in
doing
fact,
that.
yes, ma'am. And we, even early on, we had a couple of situations where like East Middle, we had to just put down the 6th grade and say,
Yeah.
6th grade, y'all are going to have to be remote. There's too many kids and teachers out. So we've tried to manage it. So we'll proceed. But we'll still let you know if there's any changes that come. So
Have we had any comments from parents saying, like if they have a child at a high school or a middle school, is it easier for them to have everybody do the same thing? Have you had any comments to that?
it is definitely easier for them to have the same thing.
Yeah,
And one thing that we have talked about, our principals are so attentive to the family's needs. It's not real difficult if we end up putting a high school enrollment. But if we have the high school in session and then we put an elementary in remote, that could create a hardship because there are situations where families depend on older siblings to be that help out. That's right. So we've talked about looking at it. If it's an elementary school, we'll evaluate that particular high school, and it may be by community, so that we're mindful of that. But parents really, I think, appreciate the
that's what I
fact
would
that
think too. I just didn't know if we had any comments.
Yeah.
on that.
parents were, from what feedback there's always some folks that are not satisfied, and I respect that and understand this is hard for everybody. But generally speaking, people have been amazingly understanding
Yeah.
and realize that we're just trying to do the best we can based on it. So, Yes.
On the policy revision, is there anybody have any reason to not have it on the agenda to vote?
I'm fine to move forward with
Okay.
that.
great. Very good. Thank you for that. We appreciate it. All right. Well, I'm going to turn over here and project the monthly facilities report. I'll turn it over to Mr. Gilbert and all of the folks in the operations team. I see we have Mr. Farmer and Mr. Patton, Dr. Wilson. So Ted?
Well, thank you, Dr. Howard, and thank you, board members. Welcome aboard, Mr. Johnson. Glad to have you here. We provide every month a monthly projects report, and you have that before you tonight. And one of the things I would just point out on the high school, which is the first one on there, is that we're starting to see a lot of 100%, 95% on painting. So as you imagine, the building is coming along beautifully. It continues to change, and getting closer and closer. The field house structure, the building itself they started erecting this week, so it's moving along, and so you'll find lots of progress over the next month or so, and you'll see a lot if you go by there. The East Jackson Middle School project, the renovation project, all of the work in the plans and specs is complete. We did receive a certificate of occupancy, so that project, again, plans and specs is done. The Empower College and Career Center Phase 1 is complete as well and is being used every day this year for Jackson County High School, next year for Empower. So I put on there everything in the report that changed from last month, and it's all of 100%. Some of the last work was done over the winter break, and we're now heading towards Phase 2. Our bid schedule right now is for the project at the end of this month to go out to subcontractors, and we'll have a month of bidding in February and then come back with numbers in the first part of March. Following the narrative that describes each project, you'll find the funding report. I highlight in yellow the new numbers that took place as of November 30th and were paid in December. You'll see a couple of those paid on high school and go right through for the Empower Center and for East Jackson Middle. And then you get to what I like, the really good part is the photographs. So if you'll, I apologize this month, these are from mid-December. With the break, we didn't get the update that we typically do, but it still gives you a good chance to look at different areas of the project. It's a beautiful school inside, and as you scroll down a bit, you'll see some that are not so far along, but then you'll get to an auditorium picture. There it is right there. That's you really start to see it take shape now that the drywall and the ceilings are going in. And then you see a couple of really nice shots in our classroom areas and Main Street, and it's just a beautiful job that we're seeing. I think our students and our staff are going to love it. So, and then you will follow that with some of the last photographs of well, I'm probably moving a little too quick there. You'll see the gym and the new maple floor that's gone in, and you will see the foundation for the field house. And if you saw a picture today, I did see one, but it's not in here. It shows the building going up there. So we're real excited. This follows with some pictures that were taken in the first week of December on Empower. And if you do get a chance, and many of you have, please go by and take a look at it. It's quite a change. I think all of our students are really liking it. I think John Easler is going to have a great building to get started in there next year.
It's amazing what
So-
it looks like a totally different
It
building.
does
It
look like
is.
a totally different. So
It really is a beautiful place now, and projects all things new. So it doesn't look like anything that you may have thought about for Jackson County High School. If you go down to a little bit further, Dr. Howard, you'll see some great pictures of the lobby and the colors and the ceiling clouds and laboratories.
I don't know how well y'all can see that, but the folks who have walked through that Empower facility, especially those in the nursing field and the medical field, nothing like it in anywhere nearby. It's really turned out beautifully. So that's going to be a great space for our kids.
One of the things that's really exciting too is that the original basketball floor, and I believe you can see it coming up, maybe the next one, we left the parquet basketball floor in place. There you go. And refinished it. So you've still got a little bit of the old. 9 people are used to going in there, but that'll be a logistics and an engineering lab in the coming days or coming months. So very exciting.
That's the actual lobby. I don't know if you can see that, but
Yeah.
really, it's turned out very nice.
So the other thing that I would share with you tonight is just some of the other projects that we're working on right now. These are not necessarily all ongoing or as large, but there's still, and there's nothing in the agenda about this, but security initiatives. The board approved security initiatives about a year ago or so, and we're moving along really well with those. The strategic crisis alert system goes into effect January 20th. The badges will be distributed. Training is underway now for all of our employees. And that's just a great security feature that if we have an issue in a school, every employee, and that's every employee, no matter what your role, wears a badge and can alert people immediately with it. We also have access control, which helps control not all of our doors, but select doors in our buildings across the district so that it's a little easier to manage, make sure that our doors are locked every day. And I would remind you that the security initiatives, half of that was funded fully by the state of Georgia with security grants. There's one other one, a reunification process under a system called Raptor that we'll implement a little bit later in the spring. We've got 3 heating and air projects that have all been approved by Georgia DOE for capital outlay funding. It's the East Jackson High School, East Jackson Elementary, and West Jackson Elementary. We're still waiting on funding on these on our side, and probably some additional scope, but those are projects that will begin some design work pretty soon and their needs. And as we get into our March board session for planning, we'll start to detail those a little bit more in terms of what we think they're going to cost and how they're going to impact budgeting and SPLOST over the coming years. Another project that's underway now on our side, on the design side, is the Gum Springs parking lot for the new park. It's immediately adjacent to West Middle. Our design will be finished at the end of this month. We put it out to bid, and it should have numbers in on that February 25th. We'll bring those to you in the March board meeting. And that work is scheduled in the front area, the grassed area of the West Middle site. And that will be in late spring and summer to coordinate with the work that's going on next door right now on the park, Jackson County's work. And then 2 others I'll mention. One you know about is the Gordon Street roofing, that we're on hold on that right now, but that is an ongoing issue. And we'll, I think as we do some additional planning with Jackson County over the coming month or 2, we'll come back with some information on that. And then lastly, we have a concept design on the East Jackson Elementary School outdoor classroom project. That's what I would call a pavilion for outdoor work. And it's been conceptually designed for some time. The PTA and others there have accumulated a good many funds over the years. And so it's now time that we move that forward. And so that's, we'll go from the initial concept design to construction documents. So I just shared, I thought it would be appropriate to share a little bit on everything that we're working on. There's other things too, but these are kind of the projects, and be glad to answer any questions if you have any.
Could we get a quick update on the furniture at the new hospital? I mean, we
Sure.
had approved that.
We haven't approved it yet, but we are in process. Mr. Gilbert, I'm not sure if you heard that, but Mr. Clarsey was asking about an update on our furniture procurement process.
Yeah, I'll be glad to share. We have a team that meets every other Friday. We meet tomorrow, in fact, and we've got concept designs now or layouts, I would say, on the administration area, classrooms, media center, just a lot of spaces right now, labs, a few more to go. Offices throughout the building are already laid out, working on some teacher lounge areas and work areas now. So we'll continue to do that. And we're working on budget as well as design, colors, fabrics, lots of things that are beyond me, but thankfully this firm has led us along pretty well so far. So we'll have orders coming, purchase orders ready in the next few weeks. We'll start that process. The building is ready. In fact, we should have had, and I didn't confirm this today, but we were due to receive 2 classrooms worth of furniture just so our school administrators and the team on that side of it can come over and take a look and see which shape they like. There's triangular shaped desk and there's trapezoidal desk. And so we wanted to make sure they could see it inside a classroom itself, the one they'll be in next year. So that's where we are right now. There's a lot to do on that, a lot to do on some other purchases as well, including athletics, signage in the parking lots, things like that we're working on right now.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well, I'll move to, if there's no other questions, I'll move to the facility use request. Did I hear a question? I'm not sure.
No,
Okay.
sir. I just said thank you. We'll continue.
Oh, a while back, the board instructed us to bring facility use request to the board, particularly related to the COVID-19 situation we're in and its impact. But we've done that along the way. This is a request from Top Flight Volleyball to add additional use for South Jackson Elementary School's gym. They currently use that gym for students from Sunday evening through Thursday evening. And this is an additional request for adult uses. The adults would come, as we're told, from Jackson County schools, City of Jefferson schools, Clark County schools, and the University of Georgia. That's the proposal, and it would be around 30 adults every Friday night. Though Top Flight has been a good tenant and has done exactly what they said along the way, it would be our recommendation from the cabinet and from the superintendent that this might not be the best time to add an additional use for that school. COVID-19 has hit all of our schools, including South Jackson, and this just may be a better time to say, let's watch the next couple of months in this in our county, see what the impact is. If it lessens, I think it would be a potentially good thing for the board to look at again. But our recommendation would be to not put a further burden on South Jackson's school and its operations right now. So that is.
Thank you, Ted. That's our recommendation. And in addition to everything Ted said, we've really tried to prioritize our students and making their first access to be for students. And of course, we still partner with the rec department. So there's already other things to manage in making sure there's student access. So while we have tremendous respect for Top Flight and they've been good partners, I think this is probably something we should hold on with your support.
I totally.
I think when I see Clark County and UGA coming in there, I think it's supposed to like desert also.
Right.
And yes, I was
Well, with the uptick of the COVID right now, it's not, I think you're right, it's not a good time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
All right.
It sounds like you're in agreement.
Yeah, I am. And then we have one more, and that is a lease agreement at the former West Jackson Primary School. Our friends there with the Brazelton Fine Baking they've been a fantastic tenant for us over the last couple of years. I believe it started in December of 18. But the COVID impact has hurt them just like it has everybody else. And so they have asked to go ahead and terminate that agreement as of next Tuesday, January 12th. They have paid along the way a significant rent, and they've also paid, which is tremendous for us, all of the utilities for that building, water, sewer, electricity for these 2 years. And they've only had the kitchen and cafeteria as their rental area. But they've paid for the whole building. So it's with great appreciation from me. I think they've done a fantastic job as a tenant. They've informed us they need to do that, and I would ask you to do it effective after your vote on Monday.
I agree.
Lots of head nods, and I think that we all second how you feel about Mr. Rubel and the support that he's been in our community. So thank you for partnering with him on that.
Yeah, he's just been an awesome guy, and I will tell you, he has worked hard to make that a success, and everything he can, and he cares about our school district.
He certainly does. So.
And I don't know if Mr. Farmer or Dr. Morris or Mr. Patton have anything they want to share at this point. I kind of took the mic, but if you do, please, this would be the time. And I'm not hearing anything, Dr. Howard. That's all we have on the facilities and operations side.
Well, Well, thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Since they didn't speak up, I will tell you that I was sharing with the board before we went live about how amazing our schools have been in responding, and the fact that we had 29 to 30 drivers out today and we're still making it happen, and that Dr. Morris continues to work very hard to provide services in a variety of means, just like our teachers are. So everybody's adapting and overcoming and doing the best they can by students. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Grateful for you saying that. They incredible job by all three areas.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anna and Aaron are with us today, so thank both of you for being here. And Anna, maybe I'll let you start with SPLOST if you don't mind, especially because it's a little bit different this month.
Yes, ma'am. I just want to make sure everybody can hear me okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yes, so you will see that SPLOST is quite a bit lower than what we were hoping for and expecting for the collections for the month of November, especially since, we had holiday shopping and Black Friday and all of that good stuff. But what I have learned is that there was a major business in Jackson County that had an audit by the Department of Revenue, and that audit resulted in this business getting a very significant refund of sales tax that they had submitted. The Department of Revenue, because of the Privacy Act, is not allowed to give me any details on what that business was or any additional information around the audit. But that adjustment for us, just the school district, was almost $107,000. So I just wanted to explain that that's the reason why collections look a little off.
Yeah.
I mean, the good thing is, except for month over month, still an increase, year over year, even with that adjustment.
So Anna, let me pause there for just a minute. You're coming through, but there's a little bit of breaking up. So I just want to clarify and make sure that periodically the Department of Revenue will do an audit, and they do it of the businesses whom they get collections from. And there is a business, we don't know which one, and they can't reveal that, in Jackson County that the Department of Revenue found that basically they paid too much, so they had to do an adjustment, and the adjustment impacted all three school districts because they have to return this funds. So, all right, Anna, thank you. I think I got that explained as not near as clearly as you would have, but relatively. So I'll start with the general fund comparison, if that's all right, for the general fund.
Yes, as you can see, a significant amount of our tax revenue come in, and so our fund balance looks right now, and we are still sitting at over $5 million above where we were last year, and it looks good.
Very.
It really does. All right, and then
Luckily, the general fund looks much better than what the SPLOST did for this month. So that's good news. And as you can see with our revenues, that we are because of the significant collection and tax revenue, we're above the percentage of the point of being the 50% part of the year we've completed. So the revenue looks great, and expenditures overall actually still hovering around 1% below the 50% of the year completed. So everything's in line, and that's even with some pretty significant Chromebook purchases this month out of the general fund. So we're right in line where we should be.
it's great news, and I appreciate you pointing out that the fact that we have 88% of our local property taxes already by this point in January is amazing, especially considering the state of affairs in our country right now. So that's really good news, and a shout out to our partners at the county for working to make that happen. So, all right. Any questions, Mr. Clarsey, or from the board about anything? Okay. All right, Dr. Blankenship, you're on deck.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Mr. Johnson. I know you have been attending some of the meetings recently, but glad to officially have you on board. I'm going to start with our enrollment update today. You'll see that our enrollment in December, we ended at 8611 for our total enrollment, and all of our schools have stayed pretty steady in their enrollment or seen slight increases. And Ms. Wilson was sharing with me earlier that our enrollment as of today is actually 8640. So we've seen an increase in about 29 students just since we started back January 4th. So that's where we are as far as enrollment.
And Dr. Blankenship, I would probably mention too that that's a net increase. So I think considering transfers in and transfers out, we've got a lot of new students this year.
That's correct. And some of our schools are really feeling that. You'll notice that Maysville and North Jackson's enrollments have increased, over the last month, and also West Elementary is continuing. I believe that they're continuing to tick up a little bit. And again, as Dr. Howard said, one or two students doesn't look like a whole lot, but when you consider you might lose 15 or 20 students because of transiency, you are also gaining that many back plus a couple. So their enrollments are all continuing to tick up. And I think as we've seen with our FTE counts and all, we're continuing to grow as a district pretty steadily. We also have some personnel recommendations for you. As you know, this time of the year is still pretty light as far as personnel changes, but there will be a small list for you to consider for approval. The next item is I wanted to give you an update on ESS and some processes that we've put in place. ESS continues to be a strong partner for us as far as making sure that we have strong, well-trained substitutes, and also in filling some of our hard-to-fill positions and our positions that we see throughout the year that come open fairly regularly with custodial services, with our para positions and some of our office support positions. And we have found that to be a very good way to be able to very efficiently and quickly bring people into working in our system and let them see if they're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for them. And so that has worked very well. But as you may remember from the very beginning almost, we have talked about how we might develop a process whereby individuals that we bring in initially through ESS, when we have opportunities arise, might transition into permanent employment with Jackson County School Systems. And so we have developed a process where we begin looking at those who have been working with us through ESS for at least a year, and then through an evaluation, a performance evaluation process, our principals and hiring supervisors are able to give them feedback. And for those that are rating on that performance review, we have 6 criteria that we're looking at. And for those that are consistently exceeding our expectations, when opportunities arise, then we're able to invite them to become a part of Jackson County School Systems. Sometimes employees don't want to take advantage of that opportunity for various reasons. They enjoy working through ESS, and some of the benefits that come along with that. But in other cases, they may want to become permanent employees. So we just wanted to put a consistent process in place so that when we do have opportunities, we have a way that we can work through that with those employees and bring them on board. So we had a couple last month that that had been through that process that we recommended and you approved, and I think we'll have a few more this month as well. And so you may see those come along over the course. They're not really going to look any different from any of our others, but you may recognize names and say, well, I thought that they've been working with the school system. That's because they have previously been with ESS, and now we're transitioning them to a Jackson County school system employee. So any questions that you have regarding that?
Dr. Blankenship, I'll talk with the board further in the personnel conversation in executive session, but I want to take this opportunity, and you may as well, to send a shout out to our clinic aides who are
Yes.
amazing individuals who we did hire, many of them through ESS. We started with ESS, and they have done a phenomenal job. And you talk about being good sports through this process, they have been steadfast. So that several of those are some of the first who have been with us for a year or two now. We'd like to retain them. We've invested a lot in us, and we've invested a lot in them, and they've invested a lot in us. That an example of how ESS has really served us well.
That's exactly right, Dr. Howard. And, if I could have the whole board meeting, I could continue to talk about how wonderful our clinic assistants have been. I mean, they really, for many of them, they have just the basic training that we have given them. So they've not gone, through a nursing program or anything like that, but they are functioning as high as a level as you possibly can in those particular roles. And we really don't know what we would have done without them over the past several months. All of our nursing and clinic staff have just been a tremendous asset to the school system and just have the best attitude that you can possibly have. So definitely shout out to them. The last item is just to bring to your attention, I shared earlier with you an executive summary that outlines this and gives a little more detail, but I'll hit the highlights here. So as you know, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act, through which we had the emergency paid sick leave, expired on December 31st of this previous year. In the subsequent bill, the COVID relief bill that the Congress and just voted on and the president signed back in December, it extends through March 31st the option for employers to offer that meet the criteria to offer emergency paid sick leave. So employers are no longer required to do that, but it is optional, and there's a bit of a tax credit. For businesses, they're getting the tax credit. For school systems, we get the CARES Act funding, and that's what the government is considering to be the replacement for us in lieu of the tax credit. So many systems across the state are trying to determine how they best proceed with that. And as you know, we feel very strongly about making sure that we take care of our employees. And in many cases, they are having to take leave through no fault of their own because they have gotten sick with coronavirus, or we are having to quarantine them due to close contact in the school system. So what we're proposing is that we have a local extension of the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act, where we are not granting a new set of 80 hours, but we are just extending through the 80 hours that the federal government had already provided. So if someone has not taken advantage of that, have the need to take advantage of it and needs to between now and the end of the school year, that's available to them. And so really we're just asking to proceed as we have been and as we've outlined here. So the highlights are that we would provide the extension of the leave at the local level for any remaining sick leave that they've not used under the FFCRA, for those people that have tested positive and for those who must quarantine due to direct exposure. If the federal government comes back and puts something different in place, then our local extension would terminate upon that, or it'll terminate at the end of the school year, whichever comes first. And the one piece that we would not continue to extend, which really we have had very, very few. In fact, I can only think of one instance that comes to mind right now, where an individual has used the expanded reason for FMLA. And what that is if they had to stay home to care for their child due to their child's school being closed, the expanded reason for FMLA gave them an additional 10 weeks. And that's not been something that we've needed to use in our system. We've been able to navigate and work with our employees, and we would not extend that. Most other systems are not extending that. Well, in fact, I don't know of any system that is continuing with that. So that puts us in line with others. So this is not a policy. This is simply a process and procedure that we would like the board's blessing for us to follow. And it would be good for us to take an action item on that, so that it is something that is in place and then would terminate if something else comes along from the government.
Dr. Blankenship, thank you for your work on that. And you may have said it, Dr. Blankenship worked with all the regional counties. And so we're very much in alignment with the way others, for the most part, are handling this. And so, but the reason we feel like it needs to have an action is when the auditors come in and they look at sick leave and the way that's handled, we need to be able to be in alignment with the way that's, because this is not typical of the way we would have done it outside of COVID. So,
Right.
It is optional to participate in the program.
right.
But, questions?
I'm want to find out a little bit more information on that, ask you questions on.
Sure,
So,
absolutely. Please do.
You okay if we just leave it for action and then wait?
That's
for
fine,
it?
yeah.
Okay.
And so, Mr. Hall, I don't know how much you can hear, but our masks are on and there's only one speaker. So Rusty said y'all might need to speak up. So that's why I'm
There's
repeating.
been a few comments, that people are having a little bit of a hard time hearing. So,
but the meeting is better than YouTube, that's what I was told.
Oh, that's good. So Dr. Blankenship, Mr. Hollett may be reaching out to you for some clarification and some questions, but not to necessarily take it off for an action on Monday. We'll determine if that's the case.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to talk with him.
All right, very good. Well, thank y'all very much for that, and thank you. Dr. Blankenship, I know that you're going to be sending out our case numbers that I mentioned earlier. Approximately, we don't need exacts because I know you're going to be publishing that, but just since we have the board here, generally speaking, our case numbers and quarantine impact?
Pretty significant for the first 3 days. So the numbers that we'll be publishing are for just January 4th, 5th, and 6th. And so you'll see, I actually just did the numbers, so I'm happy to share what our active numbers are right now. But we have 447 active quarantines as of today, and we have 73 active positive cases. And the one thing that I would say, that's actually quite a bit more than we had when we left in December. And what I would, that's not really able to be seen in that is normally we trend about 2 to 1 on student cases to staff cases. So about for every 2 student cases, we have one staff case. Right now, it's we have more staff cases than student cases, which goes back to what Dr. Howard was saying about the ability to staff the schools. We've been very, very heavily impacted at the school level with staffing right now, either due to a positive case or quarantine because someone in their immediate household has been tested positive. So that's what's making it difficult at the school level right now, is to just have enough adults, because not only are our employees being impacted, but our ESS employees, because they're part of our community, are facing the same thing. So we've struggled a little bit this week with having the same kinds of sub-fill rates that we have in the past.
So have we not had enough subs then to take care of the employees that have been out?
That's correct. We have had unfilled positions every day this week. And I will say that Lauren, our ESS partner, has worked diligently to help the principals make sure that they have the most critical positions covered. And then the principals have worked within their building to make sure that other positions are covered. But it does put a strain when you're having to play chess really and move a person from one position to another, and keep shifting around to make sure everything is, has the appropriate staffing.
Any questions for the board? I think today we had about 27 unfilled positions.
27, yes.
Um,
Normally we run about, if we have any unfilled, it's less than 5.
Yeah, normally.
And that's across the district, and we've been running in the 20s all week.
Yes, and in addition to that, there are 73 who are absent that don't require subs. So that while those folks may not require subs, those are support staff, like potentially front office or things like that, and those people are a critical part of the. So that's 100 positions if you take them combined that were vacant today.
Right.
Well, so I know we divided our population so that we would not have so many in the classroom to help with this. So are we having to combine classes now to actually cover all of this, or?
I'm not aware. I've spoken with, I believe, all of our principals this week, and I'm not aware of anyone having to combine classes to a level where they can't socially distance, which is, one of the benefits of having the alternating schedule is it does allow us to appropriately socially distance. I will tell you what the comments from the principals have said is that because we have an alternating day schedule right now, it has made this situation with staffing more manageable. And if we had full capacity of students in, I don't believe that they would have been able to work it out as well as they have. So I think that it's been a blessing that we've been in the alternating day schedule for that reason, because that's a significant number of individuals to have out of your building.
And Dr. Blankenship, I'm sure that Mr. Farmer's going to stay muted because I'm not sure that he would share the same news with us on doubling up of routes. I know they're trying really hard to run a route and then go back instead of putting 2 routes on one bus.
But they want that to double routes. Yes.
Yeah.
And, Dr. Howard mentioned the 70-something individuals in addition to those that needed subs. Well, 30 of those or so are our transportation staff. So,
yeah, that's right. So, all right, Dr. Blankenship, even all that she's managed with her personal and family, and glad her husband's doing well, but continue to appreciate all of your hard work and attending to that. So thank you. All right, leadership and performance, Mr. Nicholson. The board did receive some preliminary information, but I'll let you speak to the Chromebook replacement and distance learning if you don't mind, sir.
Absolutely, and like everyone else, welcome Mr. Johnson to this evening's meeting. And as promised at our last December meeting, I did send you 2 of the 3 executive summaries. And just to refresh your memory, in December, we briefly talked about 3, and the third one, which is E-rate funding for some technology infrastructure. Didn't want to completely overwhelm you. That will come in next month. But I would like to just briefly revisit these in a little bit more detail, and I really intend this to be more discussion than presentation. But the first one is the Chromebook replacement plan. And I'm definitely not going to read this word for word since you've had it. But the general concept here is that we've been purchasing Chromebooks for about 7 years, and Chromebooks have an end of life of sorts. Essentially what happens is they can no longer continue with the automated updates. And we've been real fortunate because actually Google has extended 2 years in a row now. We would have been having this conversation 2 years ago, and if we can all recall, we finished last year with a 15% budget cut, and this would have been a really difficult conversation to have. So we're quite fortunate that Google extended it. But we have about 7,300 of the 8,000 plus devices that in the next 3 or 4 years, actually in the next 2.5 or so years, will reach that end of life, and they'll no longer be able to do those updates. It doesn't render them useless. It doesn't mean that they don't turn on. They could still largely be used in K-1 classrooms for many things. There might be some things over time that they can't be used for, but they definitely cannot be used for state testing. And many of our partners, our vendors, the instructional software that we purchased, they require that you have a device that's it ranges between 2 and 5 versions of the most recent OS. And so at some point you can have a Chromebook that can do everything Google, but you can't use any of the instructional software. So what we put together in there is just kind of the rationale, but more importantly is as a plan that gets us through 23, 24 of how we can go about replacing these devices. And it's something we knew we were going to have to do all along. And we were trying to hold out as long as we possibly could. As Ms. Dodge mentioned earlier, we already had built in our budget from instructional funds as well as technology funds and some eSPLOST funds this year to begin this process. But the rate at which we've been purchasing Chromebooks, which is really anywhere between 500 and some years 1,500 a year, we're going to have to ramp that up a little bit in this replacement cycle. And so there's an attached spreadsheet in here as well. And what you'll really see is that we're looking at going from about $250,000 to around $500,000 for that replacement cycle. Ms. Dodge, certainly unmute as you see fit, but she and I have worked together. She doesn't see that as being a problem with our cash flow, doesn't see it being a problem with our projected expenditures, but just wanted to lay that out so that every time that we do purchase replacement devices, you kind of know where we're going and what we need, as opposed to trying, catching you off guard. The idea too is that we're trying to build in for growth, and so that's we're just talking about replacing the existing devices, but we also have a good bit of growth, and so we just wanted to be proactive with this process and put something out there that says we can manage it, and this is how we can manage it, but wanted you to be aware of it because we've made some great strides with the use of Chromebooks. I mean, the pandemic certainly was served as a catalyst for a lot of distance learning and online learning. But prior to this, I mean, you walk into any one of our classrooms, and whether it's elementary, middle, and high, teachers are able to use the Chromebooks for small groups. They're able to differentiate instruction. Chromebooks have largely replaced what we would consider normally our textbooks at high school. You carry around a Chromebook, you have access to everything in Canvas. So it's really become the essential tool for learning. But they don't last forever. So I'm going to pause right there since you've had this for a couple of days. If anybody has any questions about just kind of the rationale or our plan that we've put together, I welcome your questions.
Well, I'd just like to ask, with our new students that are coming on board, are we able to keep up with them and making sure they've got what they need so far?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, I'll tell you, sometimes it's by the skin of our teeth. What technology always tries to hold on to anywhere between sometimes 2 and 100. We try, because what happens is you also have something that gets broken and it will get repaired, but sometimes we have to send it off. So we keep some at the technology shop, and then we keep some at schools for new enrollees, but also, sometimes a child forgets their Chromebook, or they get to school, it's all, it's powered, but something's not working. So by and large, we were able to, I will tell you, West Middle was a little bit of a challenge for there. I mean, as it was growing pretty rapidly, there were some students that, they couldn't walk in, that first day and get it, but within the first couple of days, we're always able to get a Chromebook to a new student. But that's part of why not only we need the replacement, we really need about 150 to 200 that are set aside for those repairs, those temporary loaners, and new students.
Well, and Rusty, you were talking about new ones that y'all are in the process of getting up and going, right?
Yes, ma'am. The ones that are going out right now, the last purchase that
Yeah.
took a while to get shipped in,
Yeah.
those are going out
Yeah.
to students now.
Yeah, and those big shout out to technology department to figure out how to do this. They are going to have to take every Chromebook and basically relocate it over the course of the summer. We didn't want to disrupt students, teachers, parents, families right now, so they came up with a plan that was 625 devices that the board supported the purchase of earlier this year, and those are the ones that Mr. Summer was telling us it's going to take between 4 and 6 months, and in fact it did. Once they came, technology team, there's a couple things you have to do. You can't just, from unboxing to getting them into our domain, there are several steps. They immediately did that. And then we went to remote learning, so we couldn't deploy them. So they're deploying them this week. And then as Ms. Dodge mentioned, we've purchased, I can't remember the exact number, Mike, but it's around 1,200 devices, I believe. And those will also be devices that we'll continue to roll out when they get in this year. They're perfect, 1,427. Thank you, sir. And so our technology team is really trying to be proactive with this. We will have to take the devices this summer, and if a student in first grade has a device that doesn't expire, we'll have to put that into the hands of a student in third through 12th grade. But this is the type of stuff we do with inventory. It's just it's nuanced inventory, I will say, but I have great confidence that we can do it. We just felt like it was better to get the devices in the hands of the students right now, and then we can, when we're hopefully in a little bit more of a post-pandemic rate, or at least the summer where students aren't using devices as much, we can do that kind of fruit basket turnover.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good, thanks.
Is the 250 to the 500, is that should we expect that to be the new annual normal amount, the 500,000? Is that what we're thinking?
That's exactly.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We really started this in I wouldn't go back and change it, but we started this with grants. And this goes back to when Mr. Hitzkes was here, and we got a 21st century grant. We got we got one of the innovative grants, and we opened it up to teachers and said, hey, if you're interested in using a Chromebook, write a grant, and we'd love to be able to issue a class set. And that was the right way to go at the time, because you could put it in the hands of people who were eager and willing to use it. But what that didn't do is it didn't have us at a consistent rollout. You might have one school that has 50, another school that has 300, another school that has 25. And so it's, in some respects, we're really kind of restarting that process. But what we can do now, and what we've written out in this process, is it can be very predictable now. And with the technology going back and kind of shuffling the devices, that $500,000 gets us to the replacement, and that's through 23-24. I would encourage us to continue after that to keep potentially not 500,000, but to be proactive with that purchasing, so that we don't in 5, 6, 7 years, have to have $500,000 every year again. Fortunately, it's not the greatest night, and I wish that the money was a little bit more impressive than it has been with East Splost, but the year over year where it's been, I feel very confident that we could support that. And Dr. Howard can tell you, many years ago, we used to basically allocate 1 month out of the year for technology, and it was not quite as much money at that time, but we didn't have nearly as many students in Chromebooks. But that would be the plan from here out. But we won't be asking you for additional money this year. We already built that into the budget. It would be going forth into next year, and we would just build that into the budget.
And Todd, you talk about the good old days. When I was curriculum director, we also spent somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000 a year on textbooks.
Oh, yeah.
And that we no longer, we still have some AP programs and things like that where we buy textbooks, but generally speaking, we don't spend near what we used to on textbooks. So it's kind of a trade-off.
Absolutely. So no action. I just wanted, I wanted to, this is built into our March agenda, as Dr. Howard mentioned, but I just wanted to share that with you, give you enough time to think, process, ask any questions. So please call, email. I feel very confident about the plan that we've put together. I can't envision us doing what we're doing in Jackson County without Chromebooks, and that's not a COVID pandemic. That's just the way that our instruction is delivered and the way kids do homework, and it's the way of the world right now, and I'm super grateful that we can offer those. But if you've got questions, by all means, don't hesitate to let me know.
Dr. Nicholson.
Oh,
That might have been Mr. Johnson.
I think it was Mr. Johnson. If you want to type it in the comment feature, if the mic is acting funny, Mr. Johnson, I can read the comments too.
Somehow I think Mr. Johnson is in twice, and that's what's.
Well, it looked like it.
Yeah, I think he got kicked out once, and it looked.
Right.
Google is the only place where you can be in more than one place at the same time, or you can clone yourself easily. It's quite magical.
Looks like he might be typing something in. So.
Okay, I will. Perhaps what we can do is when he gets that and that pops up, I'll revisit it. But Dr. Howard, if you don't mind, I'm not going to go through the executive summary, but if you'll click on the one that says that very first Empower Online, the JCSS Connected Empower, I'd rather, oh, you were in it. Hold on. The hyperlink within that very first one. Yeah, I'd rather go through that. That's a little bit more eye-catching and appealing. And I do want to just, I'm not going to go through all of these slides, but I do want to have a little bit more discussion around this because it's new. So what we would love to do, and we've gotten a lot of traction around this, is to create what we're referring to as Connect Academy. And Connect is not just a name we pulled out of the ether. There are some students who are far more connected with their teachers. Parents are more connected with teachers in a distance learning environment. Now, that's not everybody. There are some people that's not a good learning environment at all, and we recognize that. But there are some students who are really excelling in this. And not only does it, I mean, it's the least expensive way to deliver instruction, and that's not the rationale. It's one of the premier ways that we can absolutely personalize learning. And so I want to just kind of highlight a few things in here. Right now we've got, you can see the number right there, 1,700 students that are in distance learning. Part of those students are there for safety reasons, and we realize that. But my goodness, if we only had half of those kids that still wanted to continue with distance learning, we've had a goal for now it's going on 6 years, a goal for personalized learning. And the epitome of personalization is allowing a student to work at their own pace, their own place. And for some of those students, whether you're in ag or you're fine arts or your family has to travel, to be confined to a school and a schedule and to be receive punitive measures because you're not physically there, but you can do the work is kind of a disservice to our students. And so what we'd like to do, and Dr. Howard, you can click to the next one if you don't mind, is we've got this goal of creating Connect Academy where we really see it as being the epitome of personalization, where personalized learning and distance learning are come together and kind of married. And again, this has been a strategic goal, so it's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. Go to the next slide, Dr. Howard. So something that is unique about this is that Connect Academy, the difference is right now, what we've been doing is really we call it remote, we've called it distance. Honestly, it's what researchers now are calling pandemic learning. It's teachers doing the best they can possibly do, and they are doing an awesome job. There is no but, there's no however, there's no criticism at the end of this. It's pandemic learning because these are teachers that didn't sign up for this. They're not all of them are passionate about teaching virtual, distance, whatever word you want to put in there. March, we had a principals meeting on a Thursday. We had a professional learning day we canceled on a Friday, and Monday they went into what they thought was 2 weeks of distance learning, which ended out the entire school year, and we've revisited multiple times. And so our schools have they've done an awesome job, but what our principals will tell you, what our teachers will tell you, is that to continue this, if we could centralize this and allow teachers to have like partners. For instance, if I'm a third grade teacher at South Jackson right now and nobody else is teaching distance learning, I can't really go across the hall and say, hey, this came up, how are you dealing with it? We do hold actually monthly meetings with all of our distance learning teachers. We have PLCs, and those are amazing. But you can't do like you do as a teacher, an in-person teacher, where they have informal conversations probably 1,000 times a day about, hey, so-and-so is really struggling with this concept. What are you guys doing? Here's a problem that I've encountered. How are you addressing it? So what we're talking about is doing a more centralized approach. We're referring to it kind of as connect at empower. It is not empower. Empower, we're very familiar with what that is, but to locate it at connect, and I kind of put this in there to say what it is not. It is not remote learning as you know it. It's not hybrid learning as you know it. It is a customized approach that, as I mentioned, that blends personalized learning and distance learning, and is based on each student's strengths, their needs, their skills, their interests. For us, what it allows us to do is to provide an opportunity for students where this environment has been the best learning environment for them, and for some teachers where they have really they've hit their stride. This is their niche. This is where they have just completely realized, all right, I'm meant to do this. And so what we'd like to do is be able to provide that opportunity for our students. And the next slide, I think, is a little bit about distance learning, if I recall correctly, Dr. Howard. And we've pretty well versed on that now. There's some definite benefits of distance learning. Again, not every child. But I will tell you just some things that aren't in this presentation. Social anxiety, kids that have anxiety to being in school when they can learn in their home. We've had a lot of reports about that. Students that struggle with attention deficit when they're in the classroom and there's all this stuff going on, but as opposed to when they're at home in a quiet space. I mean, there are a lot of people. There are folks that just maybe aren't. The academics is a struggle because they kind of feel lost. Well, when you're in a Google Meet, you're right there in front of the teacher. I mean, you can see everybody, you can monitor everybody. There are people that don't like to speak up in class, but they can put in a comment. So there is a good portion of our population that this has been a true benefit for. Dr. Howard, next portion. Again, this is just kind of a brief overview. We've used the word personalized learning a lot, but the vision behind Connect Academy, you've got these elements here that you can read in more detail, but really allowing students to have more choice and voice about how they demonstrate mastery. And instead of the curriculum and the schedule defining the instructional experience, allowing a student to say, I know how to divide by fractions. I can demonstrate that to you right now. And if I can demonstrate mastery, if I still need to sit in the same lesson for the next 3 or 4 weeks on this, or hopefully not 3, but if I demonstrate it now, can I go into something new? It's really hard to do that in person. It's not impossible, but it's hard. But it's really a distance learning or a digital environment. It's so much easier because you have your plan already built out, and you can say, absolutely, go forward. You go ahead and do that. And when you get to the next checkpoint, let's set up a time to meet and discuss where you are in the mastery of the next set of skills. As you can see in there, I mean, it's really more about a continuum of learning, the flexible pacing. We got a lot of kids that go down to Perry, and they go down to the Ag Show, and they either have to do all the work before they go, they have to somehow figure out how to do the work while they're there, they have to feel bad about missing class. Well, if you could essentially check in with your teacher, if you could be able to do some of that work while you're there, but not physically have to be during the same hours of school, that's kind of what we're talking about here. Dr. Howard, I'll go to the next slide if you don't mind. We have in our strategic plan, we have something referred to as personalized learning plans, and this would give us the opportunity to really actually implement this so that if the students, and we'll talk about who this is available for in just a minute, but for students who participate in Connect Academy, it's not just a one size fits all. It's kind of like having everybody having an IEP. And it's just like, how do I learn best? At what pace do I need to learn? How do I need to learn? How am I going to demonstrate my mastery? And so we actually have all this already built out, but it's just been one of those initiatives that we've kind of done 5 years of work in 10 months with COVID, and I'd never wish it happened. And I would still go back to where we were March 12th. But if there's a silver lining, it is how quickly we've had to progress through this process of not only distance learning, but personalized learning. Next slide. Connect Academy, we would like to open next year. And then we'd ideally, I think I mentioned, would like this to be at Empower. I walked through with Mr. Patton and Mr. Easler and Mr. Schultz, and we looked at space where we could house our teachers so that the teachers, as I mentioned, could have that opportunity to do some vertical collaboration. And the beauty behind that is if you're a fourth grade teacher and you've got a kid that's ready for sixth grade math, right now, you're not really sure how to do that, because if you're not a sixth grade math teacher, you're not even familiar with the curriculum. But if you're in Connect Academy, you've got a student that's in fourth grade ready for sixth grade math, you just talk to the person that's sitting right next to you and say, hey, can that person join your math group? Because right now, they have like surpassed my knowledge of what I need to be providing for them. And you can't do that as easily as in person, but when you're talking about a distance learning being your primary platform, you can do that. Okay, Dr. Howard, next slide. All right, so this getting to some of the logistics. We've decided that really we should start with 3 through 8, and I'll give you the rationale. K2, we really feel like right now K2 is best served with in-person, get those foundational literacy and numeracy skills. It's not that a kindergartner can't be successful. We've got some amazing kindergartner teachers doing distance learning right now. We could build that in, but we thought we'd start a little bit smaller, and we'd start with the students that are a little bit more ready for this type of learning environment. And so K2 would be later. We also looked at it and thought, high school, we're opening a new high school, we're opening Empower, we're scheduling as one high school. There's a lot going on in high school. So for right now, let's focus on those grades, those middle grades of 3 through 8. It doesn't mean that there won't be distance and online learning options at high school. That's not what I'm saying at all. But it just means that as a kind of official part of a Connect Academy, that doesn't make sense. For us right now, we want to, like I said, start small and make sure that we can be incredibly successful. The other part behind that is we have 8th graders that are taking 9th grade classes, and it won't be very hard if we go down this road. It won't be very hard to get 8th grade teachers who can teach those 9th grade classes. But if we don't have them initially, then we don't want to give false promises. So if you want to take algebra in 8th grade, then in person where you already are is going to be the best bet for you right now. So that's really where we landed on that. And then it's open to all students, special ed, ELL, general ed. It's open to everybody. But what we've put together, and we've got some documents that we can actually they're embedded in this presentation as well as another presentation, and it's just more of an application type process and in a way to make sure that this is a good fit for kids and that they really are ready and excited to embrace this type of learning style. And then we've set the minimum goal right now. Although we've been charged with hey, if you've got more people, then go for it. But we just thought if we could at least start with the minimum goal of 1 teacher per grade level in 3 through 5, and maybe the concept being team teaching in middle school instead of having 4 teachers, maybe having 2 teachers, because a lot of this I didn't mention is more project-based, content integrated. And so you don't need to necessarily have a math teacher, a science teacher, English language arts teacher, which again is that kind of built-in financial efficiency. And not every teacher is going to love to do that, but we have teachers that are really passionate about doing that. So as I mentioned, finding the right kids for this, it's critical that we get the teachers that are equally as passionate about this. Dr. Howard, you can go to the next one. Yeah, there's a couple more things in here about teachers. Again, you have access to this. We would treat this very similar to anything else. We'd open it up to all of our teachers, ask them to apply. You can see a timeline in there. I'm definitely not going to go into the slides after this, Dr. Howard. There's a parent orientation. I mean, it's a lot more information than I wanted to share this evening, but I wanted to put this in front of the board, just really kind of do a pulse check. I mean, hopefully you can tell I'm passionate about it, but if you think that this is the wrong direction we're going in, I want to hear that. If there's any kind of refinement we need to make, I would love to hear that as well. So I've already talked longer than I planned on, so I'm going to pause and open it up for questions and comments.
I think it sounds really good. I've heard of some students already that are saying, and parents, that this is the best way for their children to learn. So that's going to be one of the good things that's come out of this pandemic for sure.
Absolutely.
And I agree with that 100%, but I think we've got to be very careful to make sure that they have interactions with other children, and I was glad to see that they are going to be able to be a part of extracurricular activities. I think that's, for that age group, I think that is necessary.
You know, in Miss England, I'm glad you said that, because in my mind, this is almost like public school reclaims homeschooling. There's no reason why these kids can't come. Just because it's predominantly distance doesn't mean they can't do field trips, doesn't mean they can't come and meet with the teachers, doesn't mean that they can't go and take water samples. I mean, so it doesn't mean that they can't have those social interactions. You know, we don't have a lot of that right now with our distance learning, because probably 95% of them chose it for health reasons. But post-pandemic world, it's less about health and it's more about the things I outlined about voice and choice. So not only the extracurriculars, but a way for them to build their culture as well and have their own celebrations and build a sense of community. That's a big part of this that I'm glad you mentioned that I failed to outline in my presentation. And Mr. Johnson, the feedback, it's funny how that stuff works. When we post things for board meetings, it's posted a couple days in advance, and we always present it to the board before we present it to teachers. I probably had about 25 emails today about Connect Academy and interest in Connect Academy. So we've not really even shared that with them a whole lot. We've talked to our principals about it. We do have some people who, as I mentioned, have just really found their niche. And for those folks, Dr. Blankenship has led our leaders through irreplaceables. And sometimes when, to quote Dr. Howard, you got the right person and the right seat on the bus going the right direction. And for those folks, when we can make that fit, it's just a beautiful marriage of a teacher's passion providing exactly what a student needs, when they need it, and how they need it.
So, I agree with all of that. My question is, as I look at your schedule, at what point do you need to decide and finalize, or we're gonna hear some feedback, I guess, in February? I'm looking at the schedule, identifying and around the teachers and students. Is that really when we can expect some kind of feedback and kind of hear kind of where we're at? Because I think nobody's really opposed to this. I'm sure I wrote down just while he was talking a couple more questions that we discussed, but kind of more interested in when we're going to get it out to people, because 20% of our folks are using it now, roughly, if I understand right.
That's right.
So I would think, your thoughts probably are going to be that's going to be less, right? Or you're thinking it's going to be more?
I think we probably have well, it could go, I mean, to answer your question as a true politician, it could go either way. But I really mean that. I think if we did the exact same thing we're doing with distance learning, it would decrease. Because there's some people that are having a great experience, but they really want to be back in person. We're not doing the exact same thing as we're doing with distance learning. So I actually think, I think we'll have people that still want to go back to in person, that's in that current 20%. But I think we'll also attract people that are currently not in distance learning when they see what this is. So to answer your initial question, our goal is we just want to make sure that the board feels good about what we're doing. And as soon as next week, certainly within the next 2 weeks at a minimum, we wanted to do a very preliminary survey to parents and families and say, and that's why you see that there's actually a parent presentation, there's a teacher presentation. Put those out there, use Remind, Infinite Campus, send out there and say, Jackson County Schools is planning on a Connect Academy. Please just respond if you're interested, and ask them to just basically say, the name of the child, the grade, and an email that we can contact folks. And that allows us to get that, there's no guarantee, but that allows us to generate, to get a sense of how much interest is out there. And once we do that, it falls nicely in line, and Dr. Howard and Dr. Blankenship might want to comment on this as well, but it falls nicely in line with our personnel process that we already have in place, which is why we want to talk about it now, because we're talking about the same number of students in Jackson County. We're just talking about some students might be online, which means some of our teachers would not necessarily be located at a school. They would be, they'd be at Connect. They wouldn't be at their current school. We're still talking about the same number of kids that we're teaching. So we really do want to be able to, by February, at least give preliminary interest. We've heard from 1,800 families, or let's say 750 families, and that's 1,100 kids. And so we're going to proceed as planned, as if that's the number that we can accommodate, and we're going to go ahead and open up the application process. It's a little robust, aggressive. I don't know what the word, but we don't have the time to wait. So we're poised and ready, though.
Mr. Nicholson, I would add, I think this, and we're not going to talk about high school programming tonight. We will follow up with high school programming when we get, into February and March. But one of the things that we've really focused on is letting student need drive our staffing. Traditionally, and it's not a criticism, it's just the way it was always done. You hired a certain number of teachers and then you scheduled the teachers and then you put kids where they would fit. And sometimes kids got their third or fourth choice and whatever their electives were and things like that. I mean, we've always done a very good job making sure they get their core, and our high schools have gotten increasingly better at meeting students' needs where they are. But I think one element that is a common thread with this is that by Mr. Nicholson surveying parents and just seeing what the interest is, we're not likely going to need additional personnel. We're just going to say, look, this is where the need is now. So let's shift the personnel from who would have been a seated class over to serve at the Connect Academy, and those kids are going to be served in a different model. So as with anything, there's probably going to be some implementation, impact a little bit. But again, it's being really specific about letting our student needs and preferences personalize the way we plan for personnel as well.
Yeah, I would say mathematically it might not lay out exactly what we want. Oh, sorry, somebody speaking.
Yeah, Miss Anglin was saying something. What were you
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was just saying, and you have some faculty members that will excel in this area.
That's right.
Yeah.
You do.
That was my only concern. I didn't mean to
No,
stir anything up.
no, absolutely. No,
I think the interaction is necessary.
most definitely agree.
I absolutely agree. And I just, I don't want to, again, false bill of goods or anything. I mean, that it's not going to mathematically work out perfectly because, you might need a teacher for a year that, as you're pulling students. I mean, I use the example all the time. If you had a fourth grade class and you pulled 5 kids from each of our elementary schools, that's 30 kids. But where does that teacher come from? However, we earn, it's not as if we earn teachers based on the number of students we have. And so it could be a little bit kind of like special education happens where it's a year in the rear. We would not continue to do something if we didn't earn the teachers. It might, we will do our due diligence to make it work out to where we're really minimizing any kind of addition. And I can pretty much guarantee after 1 year, we wouldn't have to do that. But as Dr. Howard mentioned, we're not going to come to you and ask for 10 teachers. I don't want you to think that. But if you see a teacher or two that's on there that's connected to Connect, I just want to be very forthright and open and honest about how that might come out. But again, that's really out of advocacy, more so for our schools, so that you don't say, all right, we'll figure out where you're going to replace that teacher if in the scenario that I just outlined. But
Dr. Howard, if you do this.
Hi, thank you for our presence.
Oh, I didn't get to see. Do you have your 7 Mindset stuff out there?
I do, yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
Wonderful. It's not on the agenda, but our school system is going to get the distinct opportunity to hear from Scott Schickler, the CEO of 7 Mindsets, on January 21st, and it's from 11 to 12:30. And if you would like to pop in on that, we have 500 seats. It's virtual, and he's going to be doing something called Teaching with Heart. And it's actually completely designed around teaching during a pandemic and teaching during racial tensions, just social anxieties. And so we're really, he's only done this in 2 other locations. So we're really fortunate that he's going to be able to provide that. And I want to thank y'all for supporting 7 Mindsets. If it's, in some cases, it is what is getting some of our students and teachers through these difficult times. So that's a small token of our appreciation for you supporting it.
Mr. Clarsey just asked a great question that I will ask and then I will answer, but then you add to. He was basically asking sort of where would this responsibility for oversight fall for Connect Academy? Like where, when you say it's at Empower, the teachers are located there, but the students are distant. But there still has to be like the equivalent of an administrator or oversight of it. And I think that's what you're asking, right? And so right now, what we have going on, we've got, as you've said, 1,800 kids plus who are in a distance learning setting. And right now we have Dr. Karen Rodenroth, who is an assistant principal at West Elementary School, who is facilitating that. And she's done a great job with that. And part of the reason, there's many reasons why she's doing a great job with that, but she also needed to be in a distance format. So it's worked out beautifully for her and for us. And again, a shout out to that. Going into next year, Todd, you want to pick it up from there, what we've talked about a little bit and how that will be overseen by combination of teaching and learning, and then I'll let you speak to that.
Sure. And so absolutely, Dr. Rodenroth has been amazing, and she's primarily been over the elementary, and I've primarily been over the middle school. It's amazing when you have people that want to be a part of a certain learning environment. It's a little bit easier to manage because they're eager to be a part of it. So the idea would be that it would, since it's centralized, it would very much be a part of the teaching and learning initiative. And so the teachers that are there would really be an extension of teaching and learning, have that direct partnership with the folks that are already on our team. It kind of falls underneath our distance learning team that it has, and you've got Jen Sane, who's our personalized learning coordinator. You've got Kat Flippen, who is our expert of all things technology and innovation. And you've got Martha Stewart, who is on that. Martha Wilson, who's on that. I don't know where that came from. Martha Stewart, for the record, is not on our team. Martha Wilson, who is on our team. See, I should never list off people's names because you're going to forget somebody and add something. So the idea is that they would be an extension of the teaching and learning office, and that we would be able to support that. That's kind of why I said it a few minutes ago about, there might be a position we'd love to add, and to be able to have somebody who is potentially designated, even if it's just part of their responsibility, to be kind of the primary coordinator of that. We can pick up a lot of it, but our school leaders are really grateful for this because they've had to manage in-person and distance learning and hybrid and everything else, and it's a lot, and they'll tell you. So for us to pick it up, we're happy to do so, but it might require us to have some, maybe an additional personnel to divvy some of the responsibilities up. But it would be a teaching and learning extension.
All right, thank you, Mr. Nicholson. I'm going to go over here and see if I can close that out.
Appreciate it, and just send questions, thoughts, comments my way.
So that was a lot of information, but that's all of the information that we have for this evening, other than the fact that I think our board is going to need to have an executive session for our personnel. And so I will turn it back over to you, but thank you very much for your attentiveness, and thank y'all for reviewing this information ahead of time. If this works for you, we're going to try to make it a pattern to send it to you ahead of time a little bit, so that you've got some time to review it. So, all right, thank you.
Was this an item that I wasn't super clear about that action that was going to be?
No action on any of them. No action on anything. Just kind of we just use that template to keep it common, but no action.
Okay. All right.
The only thing that we need to decide whether or not we have an action would be the extension of the Families First for the sick leave. That one we would need. Okay.
So before there is a need for executive session. Do we want to meet in here? Do we want to?
Well, what do y'all have planned for us for our executive session?
What I think, if it's okay, if you can just mute that, if you and Amanda can leave, I'm going to close out this meet, and then I'll go back to it, and I have another meet that has Dr. Blankenship, and you go to the restroom right ahead, help yourself, has Dr. Blankenship, and I will invite Mr. Johnson to that one as well, so Mr. Johnson can join. So does that work? Or should I?
So we need a motion to come out of executive session.
I make a motion.
Got a motion?
So move.
Got a second? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Back from our executive session, what we have to report is, we went over the evaluation with the superintendent. She had satisfactory, we want to report satisfactory evaluation. That is all of our business tonight. And we look forward to seeing everyone Monday night. Right here, same place, same back station.
That's right.
We're adjourned.
Okay.
Thank y'all so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank all
Thank
of you
you.
who